Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Sojourning Writer. Today we're going to be discussing different websites that we can use to create our worlds. One thing to note that a lot of these websites are used for like D&D and whatnot. So all of them aren't specifically designed for writers specifically, but they are still great applications that we can use to help create the image of our world in our minds. Also, something that we can share with our readers. If we are able to create a realistic portrayal of what the world actually looks like and have that shown on a map, it makes it a lot easier for us to give a depth of the story for our readers. So one of the first things we're going to take a look at is Chromographer. So this is a website that I found, just did a little poking around. As always, I will be linking the links to these websites in my description. So if you want to check these out. One of the big things I want to look at is not just how good they are, but also, the costs, because all of this is usually coming out of our own pockets particularly when we first start. So we want to make sure that we're getting the most bang for our buck. Now, that being said, if it's free, like Chromographer, you have to tailor your expectations. So I'm going to take a look at what's called the playground. All right. So one of the things here is that with this one, you can actually see it's all hexagonal in your world and how you're building it. So you start off with land, and this is how they have it set up, and it's pretty basic. So there's not a lot to this. So there's not a whole lot that we're going to be able to get out of this. Again, this is free, so sometimes we need to make sure that we're not over expecting while underpaying. All right. So these hex designs over here on the right they'll give us a broad understanding of where things are, but there's not a lot detailed to this. All right. The next one is Wonderdraft. Now the problem is with this one is that it's not a free map. You have to pay for it. You actually have to pay for the whole thing before you can use it. As you can see, it's about $30, but as I am not willing to pay money for it right now, I don't really have the ability to actually go in and take a look at what's going on. Watch the video, and it seems pretty straightforward. And as we can see, they give a pretty good look at how to create or what you can do with this, and a lot of this is pretty straightforward. There's going to be a lot of overlaps with a lot of these world building websites. So the next one we're going to move on to is AZGAAR's fantasy map. Now with this one, something you need to realize is this isn't a typical fantasy generator. So one of the things that you want to make sure that you're realizing in this one is you can't actually create the world. This is more of a random generator that you can edit. So you can edit the label and whatnot, but the thing is that you're not going to be able to actually create a world that you are doing anything with. This is purely a random map generator that you can use and start off to build a world off of, but this isn't necessarily something that you're going to have for trying to create your world from scratch. Now the next one is the NBOS fractal mapper. This is also a paid one. So what we can see here for $34 or $35, we get a pretty basic map. Again, sometimes you can have the fractal side or that type of design for how your map layout and whatnot. There's a fair amount of detail with something like this. But there's another one. The next one we're going to look at is going to be a little bit more even more in depth. So the Profantasy software is one that I've had for a while. I've made a map or two on this one. This one's a little bit more expensive, but you're going to get a lot more out of it. They actually have downloads that you can do and actually go through the different types and have figure out what you want to do. Fractal terrains is kind of the same thing. And if you have a spacefaring map, that will come into play, as well as character creation. For the store, they do a lot of bundles. As of right now, you can see the top three, which is the Cartographer, City, and then Dungeon. It's about $74. I paid $99 when I ordered it about 10 years ago almost. So this is an older setup, and as you can see from here, this is the one that I have. You can actually see a lot of different things, a lot more detail about what you can do with all of this. This is the example that they give. You can actually see there's a lot of detail with cities, volcanoes, farmland, paths. This one, you got to make sure that you're paying attention for if you want to get it or not, because this is a very, very in-depth map creation system. There's a higher learning curve for something like this. And we can also do cities and dungeons in this one that I have. This next one's called an Inkarnate. So this one's a little bit different. This is a purely web-based. And as you can tell, they have a pro version and then they have a free version. The free version has a fair amount of maps that you can use depending on the type. So this is more of a dungeon battle map. And then you have a city version, and then you have a watercolor battle maps. Or you also have a regional map, which is it's a lot more zoomed out. And then you have a world one. So we're gonna click a world one. The pro is about $5 a month. And this gives us a little bit of we can do a lot of work here and pull up and figure out what we want to do as far as creation. So it's pretty self-explanatory what you want to do. So we're just going to create a basic round world. Like I said earlier, unless it's like formed by magic, there should be some understanding of typography and crusts and the mental and all of that, the tectonic plates and whatnot. So if we're going to do tectonic plates, if we're going to do the mantle, we're going to need to make sure that we have everything along the way. And one of the things is that with something like this, if you have like a tectonic plate, the mountains just don't stop. They actually continue on, and change the size along. So if we're doing this, where this would be the edge of a tectonic plate, we can actually do a little bit more and have highlands going down on the other side. Now, one of the things with this is that we can actually have two warring factions on either side, and because we have a huge mountain range, we actually have an inability for this side to attack this side, or this side to attack this side. You see this with Lord of the Rings, where Mordor is actually kind of blocked off. It makes it hard to invade unless you're coming from the rear. Like with Mordor, you have an open section to the back, but all of the front is protected by the mountains. Makes it very hard to get into the area. So what we can also do is set up fortresses. They have different things that we can use. Sea, and for flags, trees, and depending on how big you want your forest. We get all of these options. Some of these, like this, are all, part of paid. So anything with a star is pretty much going to be part of the paid system. So you don't have a ton, but you do have a fair amount that you can just give yourself a basic look of what you want to do as far as how your area. So we have like basic fortified cities, we have villages, we have fortresses, we have bridges we can use. So if we put things like water, water blue, different, types of water, we have snow. So we want to do like, what you always got to remember is that the water is always going to take the path of least resistance. We see this with every water system that we have. Everything flows from like the mountains to the sea. It doesn't go the other way around. So one of the things that you got to take in mind is that, say you have a mountain, here, right? Let's go all the way to the back, initial state. All right, so if we have, say, a mountain here, a mountain range, we'll have a little bit better. Your mountain range, one of the things we need to make sure we're paying attention to is if we're having, the water here, we need something a little bit darker. If we have a river going from the mountains here, what doesn't actually happen is it doesn't go, start here and go branching off. That's never the case. It actually is the other way around. So you would have water coming down and then it would flow into different ones. And that's how we make more realistic water features. Now, depending on where it is in the map, so rivers are always going to flow from the positions of high elevation to low elevations. It doesn't matter what else is going on, and it doesn't always have to take the same route that you would expect. So for instance, in the Middle East, we have two forms, we have two bodies of water called the Sea of Galilee a river, the Jordan River, and then a smaller one down here called the Dead Sea. Now, what's interesting with the Dead Sea is actually because the way that this works is everything that goes into this area here flows down, and we actually get deposits down here of everything that was up here. So one of the things that we have to realize in this case is that because there's no outflow for the Dead Sea, that everything that's up here just flows into it. There's actually what's interesting here is that this is the Dead Sea, so it's actually very, very salty. It's actually one of the highest concentration of salts. So to the point where it actually is almost extremely difficult to swim below the surface for a normal person. So one of the other things that we can take a look at is once you've created your map and you have a basic outline of what you want to do, there are other programs that are a little bit more world building wiki, sort of like Wikipedia. Now, one of the things that you want to know with something like world building, where it has a lot of the stuff going on for how to build the world in the Wikipedia type systems, it is expensive, and they are, depending on how you do it, so there are lifetime subscriptions or lifetime payments for World Anvil. Just a note, when you order something from Profantasy, it's a one-time payment. it's not a subscription-based system. So the World Anvil they do have a lifetime, but it's really expensive. They do have yearly subscriptions, which are a lot cheaper, but unless you're actually doing a lot of this, I don't think it's actually going to be worth it. Like I've said before, no, I'm not getting paid for any of this. So these are just tools that I want to offer to you as writers to maybe help build your own writing. And a place like this is where you can put all that extra stuff that you don't actually have in your story, that you actually can't put into the story. Those elements of world building that are just not able to be put for the sake of the plot into your story. So that's pretty much all I had for today. So hopefully you guys can poke around, see what works for you. Any comments, suggestions, let me know in the comments. So until next time, bye.
I am a poor, wayfaring stranger. I'm traveling through this world of woe, yet there's no sickness, toil, nor danger in that bright land to which I go.